So I hope you have some idea, not of why you're here or why you're taking this course, but of at least why I think you're here taking this course or there taking this course. It's because you're studying to become a professional. And on the one hand, I take that as the basis of the course. On the other hand, I recognize that we can't just sort of assume things in a philosophy course, and that it's really not so clear whether engineering is a profession or whether something being a profession is a useful thing at all to, to point out or to claim. But one of the things that I believe is that in a course on professional ethics, we take codes of ethics seriously. I got to tell you, that's not something I always did. I suppose I had a very jaded view before I began teaching engineering ethics of codes of ethics generally, that they were phony, that they were, they're public relations things. And oftentimes they are. I mean, probably Goldman Sachs has a code of ethics that they, you know, paid somebody to write. You know, but and whatever you think of that, in engineering, that's not the case. It's not the codes of ethics that exist for you, and there are many, but we'll be focusing on the one that I think is meant to apply to all engineers, the National Society of Professional Engineers Code of Ethics. Those codes of ethics are not, whatever else they are, they're not just public relations. They're serious things. They're a response to a certain need. That is, if engineering is a profession, then according to what I was laying out before, none of which was original thinking to me, but it's just sort of thinking, general thinking about professional ethics. If a job, a field is going to be recognized as a profession, then it is obligated to regulate it itself ethically. That is, the notion is that in being granted, the status of a profession, that you have the profession has to prove that it can handle the responsibilities, the privileges and the power that go along with being a profession. The idea is if you have such a profound impact on people's lives, then you have to prove that you are up ethically to the task of handling that power. And the Code of Ethics, in this case, the Code of Ethics in our class will mean the NSPE Code of Ethics, is a demonstration on the part of the engineering profession that it understands that and that it holds its members to certain limits on what it can do. Sets out what its limits are, what its duties are, and responsibilities are, and those are pretty much captured in the fundamental canons, the 6 canons in the beginning of the Code of Ethics. It's up on the website. It's on the Blackboard site. I think in week 3, maybe you can take a look at it. But one of the things you really might want to do is go to the NSPE website, where there's a wealth of material. As we'll see, the Board of Ethical Review cases of the NSPE are just this incredible resource in engineering ethics, and we'll see just how good they are. I mean, it's really great. I don't know if law and medicine have such a convenient, easily accessible database of decades and decades of cases in engineering ethics and decisions made by a board of people, board composed of people from within the profession. So the NSPE obviously is an organization for PEs, professional engineers. Not all of you will become professional engineers in the sense of PEs, but even if you're not a PE, you're still a professional. If you're an engineer and you're doing engineering, you're a member of a profession. I want to make that clear. In my view, you don't have to have a PE license to be a professional. You are a professional the moment you actually get your engineering degree and begin to actually work as an engineer. But the NSPE is a organization for PEs, professional engineers. It encourages people to get their PE license, no matter what field they're in or what their job situation is. And of course, there are all sorts of advantages to getting that. But the idea is, and this is, I'm going to stand firm on this, is that that code of ethics is meant to apply to all engineers, not just PEs. Okay? That code of ethics is very similar to other codes of ethics. And why are there other codes of ethics for engineers? Because there's other engineering societies, for electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, civil engineers. I believe is, others, but that's having to do with the history of the engineering profession, right? Is that there's not really one body organization that represents all engineers like the American Bar Association or the American Medical Association really has authority over all doctors and lawyers. The NSPE is as close as we're going to get to an overarching organization that represents and has authority in some sense over all engineers. Obviously there are other engineering societies for particular fields, but this is the only one that has any pretense of representing or in some way or another applying to all engineers. I take very seriously the NSB Code of Ethics. Again, when I first began teaching this course in total ignorance of engineering and the meaning of a profession, I suppose that I, like many people, had a very cynical view of these things. As I've used it over the years, I've gained more and more respect for the NSPE Code of Ethics, at least to the extent that I've recognized that what's in there is in there for a reason. Everything that's in there is in there because there was a felt need for some issues to be addressed. And if you look at the Code of Ethics, you'll see that it covers different things in different ways. Some of the typical problems of being a professional that apply to all professions, for instance, financial things and conflicts of interest, which apply to all professions. But what is the heart and soul? The heart and soul of the Code of Ethics, the heart and soul of engineering ethics. It's the first canon, and we will be spending a lot of time talking about it. The first canon. So important that even I have it memorized. Engineers, or more or less memorized, engineers shall, in their professional duties, hold paramount the health, safety, and welfare of the public. Never was a more fateful statement made, right? And we'll see how complicated it becomes, I think. But that is the heart and soul of engineering ethics, because it's the heart and soul of the claim of engineering to be a profession at all. That and this makes you different as engineers from doctors or lawyers. Doctors and lawyers still, to this day, I think, work primarily with clients or patients. And the idea is that they have to hold paramount the interests of their patients or their clients, which engineers are supposed to do too. And believe me, I know there's all sorts of complications with that. One of the big issues we'll be dealing with is that strictly speaking, most engineers don't have clients. They have employers who have customers. And this makes a huge difference, and we'll get into it. But what's embodied in the first canon of the code is the notion that the engineer does not simply have a obligation to serve the interests of their clients, but has an obligation to the whole world. That's what the public is, basically the world. And a recognition that the kind of things that engineers do have this wide impact. I mean, most doctor messes up, they can kill a patient, but rarely are they going to, cause a disaster. A lawyer messes up and their client could lose their life, their property, their freedom. But rarely are they going to create a disaster for the public. The really heart and soul, the difference between them and engineering ethics is that engineers mess up, and man, they can do damage on a scale unimaginable to those other jobs.